Okay, let's go and get started. Welcome everyone to Bizz Summit Spain 2022. This is deploying Power Pages in Microsoft Teams. My name is Chris Hoard. I'm a Teams MVP and Partner Education Lead from Fusion here in the UK. Can I just begin by saying that I'm very excited about the session today, and I'd just like to thank the organisers for accepting and giving me the opportunity, especially as I didn't have the opportunity last year. Now, I have to say, sorry in advance that I'm not there in person and that this is a pre-recorded session. Logistics has meant that I can't be there on Saturday, but I hope you enjoy what I'm about to show you over the course of the next kind of 30-40 minutes. And a big thank you to the sponsors as well, because it's good sponsors and good organizers that make great events. I'm sure that if you're there in person on Saturday, it's going to be amazing in terms of sessions and networking opportunities. And if you're watching online, then you can wrap these great sessions around your day. The organizers have put a lot into this. It's one of the best events in the calendar. So yeah, enjoy, and hopefully I'll be there in person next year. So what to expect from this session, deploying Power Pages in Microsoft Teams? First of all, we're going to break it down into three parts, and the first part is going to be all about the why. I managed to figure out how to do this. I put the cart in front of the horse, so to speak, and then I had to go back retrospectively and kind of work out why, and then I realized there's loads of reasons as to why you would do this. We're then going to move on to the how. So we're going to go and look through every step in how we deploy Power Pages and Teams. Practical communities like the Power Platform I really admire, because I'd like to consider myself quite practical. I used to be a field engineer and an architect and head of professional services for a long time. I still keep my hand in the tech community because I love that practical element. So a large amount of this session is going to all be about the how. To cap this session, we're going to have a call to action, what you can do after the session is over. But all three parts are really underpinned by the outcome, which is learn how to install and render pages in Microsoft Teams. Now, this session is a level 300 session. It's an advanced session because we get quite kind of deep into the granularity of it. You need to know about Teams. You need to know about the Power Platform. You also need to know about Azure AD too. So it's going to get very nuts and bolts as opposed to being theoretical and conceptual. In terms of its focus, this is going to be on Microsoft Teams. We can, of course, go and deploy the Power Page, but really this session is concerned with how we fit that into Microsoft Teams. There's two different ways to do so. In terms of this session, the demo is 60%, could actually be higher, could actually be 70. I want to make this as hands-on as possible. I mean, I'm sure you can read up elsewhere on Power Pages, but I want to show you how kind of straightforward this is once we've done it a few times. There is a caveat to this session, though. It's valid for 4 weeks. Microsoft Teams changes regularly, and the cadence on Power Platform is probably just as fast. So I don't want to kind of say to you that this is going to be this way forever. I mean, hopefully Microsoft bring out its own Power Page app in the same way that you can surface a SharePoint page through Viva Connections. I mean, that's the ideal world, right? But we'll see. I mean, we'll see how long this lasts for. So let's start by talking about the why. Why surface Power Pages in Teams at all? As said, I worked out the technicals first and then went back and then kind of thought a little bit about the business reasons. And there is lots of reasons to do this. I mean, the first one that I could think of is that it's an alternative for a SharePoint site or for Viva Connections. That could be too restrictive. Now, I'm not bashing those services. I've deployed hundreds of SharePoint sites and Viva Connections within inside Microsoft Teams. This is just another way to get a web page into Microsoft Teams. It's an alternative. It's not, I'm not trying to force you to use Power Pages. The option is yours. But if you think that a Power Page, you can have both your makers and pro dev on that Power Page, then you could create something that you've got total flexibility. It might not feel so rigid. That could be a big benefit as to why we do that. Secondly, and kind of leading on from this, there is loads of great examples of Power Pages, that's in use today. Microsoft use some, the community use some. Two that surfaced to my mind. The first is the Microsoft feedback page, which is feedbackportal.microsoft.com. That's the page where if you've got any feedback on one Microsoft service, if you've got an idea that you think might be good in that service, we go to feedbackportal.microsoft.com, and then we would either vote up or we would open our own. In addition to the feedback portal, we have, if you work with Microsoft Teams calling, the PSTN desk, which, let's say that we're doing a migration of numbers into our Teams admin center, we would raise a ticket there. I mean, both of those Power Pages are very functional. They're just really great experiences. You could have those, but have them within Microsoft Teams. You have to think Teams is what Microsoft regard as the front end. It's where people in our organization is working. Why try to get them to go out to a web page when you can bring that into Microsoft Teams and into the flow of their work? And this doesn't just apply to your business either. If you're a Microsoft partner, you could build a Power Page and surface it in your customers' teams too. There's a lot of opportunity there, particularly if you're keeping that page up to date. That could be professional and managed services, right? Thirdly, it's about kind of integrating with the rest of the Power Platform within Microsoft Teams. We have an app for Power Apps. We have an app for Power Automate. We have an app for Power BI. As kind of engineers and admins, we love consistency. So to be able to have an app for Power Pages, Microsoft might bring that out later on, but this gives us an opportunity to do that today. And underpinning all this is this idea is that Microsoft Teams is the place where people work, where we're bringing apps together so that people have everything at their fingertips. In fact, to the tune of 270 million monthly active users. Now, considering all these things, if I'm looking at it from a business sense, this is an opportunity for those fusion teams, for makers and pro devs to work together. So, you're going to be building the Power Page, but part of that requirement is to surface it in Microsoft Teams. It adds to what they do. But also as well for the organization that you're putting this into, having that Power Page and bringing it into Microsoft Teams is just another reason to get it if that site is hosted externally into a Power Page. The fact that you can surface it in Microsoft Teams is another selling point. So there are lots of reasons as to why we would do this. And like I said, I did work it out and then come back to those reasons. But if I'm having a conversation, I would explain this before I actually go and do the deployment. Now, to do this deployment, there are some prereqs. There is two. The first is the Azure AD role permissions, and the second is the licenses. In terms of permissions, there is really two routes we can take. We can use the global administrator permissions. Now, that will allow us to do everything that you see here today, but many organizations do not allow users for security and compliance reasons to have that role. So if you need something that is more specific, then you can do this through a combination of the team service admin, the application admin, and the Power Platform admin. If you have all three, you should be able to achieve what we see here today. In terms of licenses, a Microsoft 365 or Office 365 license that includes Teams. So we're not just going to be deploying it in Teams, we're going to be building it as well using the developer portal, which funnily enough has changed, because when I first started doing this, I did it in App Studio. Then I come back along and last week and I went to go and do this again, and then I saw that the whole process had completely changed. So, what I'm going to show you today is the new way of doing it, because App Studio has now been retired. In terms of, moving past Microsoft 365 or Office 365, we need licensing for the Power Page too. We can also do this on a trial, and the trial is what I'm going to be showing you today. This is cool too, because it means is that if you're going to do your deployment, you can do it on trial licenses and it moves to paid afterwards. That's how Microsoft partners sometimes do this. They deploy the solutions on trials and then convert to paid. So how to deploy Power Pages in Teams? There are two ways. We can either deploy as a tab or deploy as a personal app. Before I show you either of these options, what I'm going to first do is that the first step, what we would do in reality is actually deploy our Power Page. So if I kind of come and I actually go, let me just go and get the page for it. Okay, so make.powerpages.microsoft.com. I'm going to put this page in. If we haven't deployed a Power Page at all, we will actually go to a page in order to be able to log on and add it as a trial. But as you can see here, I've already done that, and it's saying to me, welcome, Chris. Now, the site that we're actually going to put into Teams has already been deployed. I've already deployed it because it means is that you won't have to wait any time in this session for it to deploy. But I'm going to show you how to deploy a Power Page. It's very simple. We go to create a site, and then we choose a template. We then wait for this purple box, choose the template. We then put in a name for the site, and it will check to make sure that the URL can be provisioned, and then we click done. That's all it takes. It's a simple GUI experience, and then that's going to go off and it's going to deploy our page. As said, the one that we're actually going to be using today, so it's all set up, is already there. And you know what? We've called it Bizz Summit, bizzsummit.powerappsportals.com. We can see that it's all ready to go because if I open up a new tab, there we go. The Power Page is already rendering. Nothing's been changed on that because we don't need to do that as part of this session, but we do need to ensure that before we surface it in Teams, that we can see that Power Page externally. So we're all ready to really kind of discuss at this point how we deploy as a tab or we deploy as a personal app. Let's pick option one, deploy as a tab. I'm going to go inside my Teams environment. Here I go, I'm in Teams. Here is my team, and below it, I've got three types of channels. I've got a public channel, a private channel, and a shared channel. Now, if I want to surface that Power Page within here, I pick the channel, I click to add a new tab, I search for the website app, and then I'm going to call that website app Bizz Summit. I put in my URL, and I click save. There we go. The Power Page is in Microsoft Teams. I'm going to do it again for the private channel. Here we go. I'm going to do it now for the shared channel, and you can tell the differences between the icons next to the channel. Now, you might say, why am I doing this 3 times? It's important to me that everything that I say kind of bears some form of reality. So I wanted to show you right here, right now, that this can be done in every kind of channel and is supported within Microsoft Teams. So that is deploying, okay, as a tab. Everything is supported with inside Microsoft Teams. That might be easy. But what we're going to move on to is we're going to move on to deploying as a personal app. Now, what is a personal app? A personal app is what sits in the left-hand rail of Teams. As you can see, look, I'm going to show you. I've set one up earlier. So I can access straight off of the rail my Power Page and get to it. This has advantages because if we put them in Teams, that Power Page is only surfaced and accessible to specific types of teams. But it means is that we have to go and create tabs all the way through outside our environment. And we always talk about team sprawl and things getting complex. This increases the complexity. Here, if we're adding it as a personal app, every user inside our organization that has what we call the app setup policy will be able to see this Power Page and select it from the right-hand side. Now, imagine if we've also got other Power Platform. Imagine we've got Power BI there or Power Automate. That is what we're talking about. Our Power Page can sit right next door, one click into our Power Page and into the content that we need. So how is it that we kind of do this? How do we get this into Microsoft Teams? We cannot just simply go, there's no app from Microsoft, so we have to go and create our own. Now, the first step of this is to go and deploy that Power Page. As you see, I've already done that. I've created my Bizz app Power Page. That is ready to go. So step 1, we've already done in this session. This moves on to step 2, which is creating the app in Teams. So we have to create that app from scratch. And there's 2 parts the developer portal in Teams, and Azure AD, and we need to work between the two. So let's get going on this, because this is probably the longest part of the session. So here I am, okay, with inside Microsoft Teams. I click on the three little buttons and I select the developer portal. If you can't find it or can't see it there, just simply type in developer and then click and select the developer portal. Now, here you will see a lot of tabs along the top. App Studio has been retired. If you try to access it, it'll be all grayed out. So what we have to do is we have to go and start with apps. Now, that one that you've just seen that I've already deployed, that's that app right there. We're going to create one completely from scratch. So I'm going to create a new app. I'm going to call this Bizz Summit. So this is going to be my Bizz Summit app. I'm going to click add. I'm going to be taken to a page where it starts almost a kind of wizard in order to be able to create that. It's not quite a wizard because it doesn't go linear throughout the steps, but it's almost there. It kind of approximates it. So the first thing that I start out with is my name of my app, which is Bizz Summit, and I would give it a full name, which is Bizz Summit 2022. I have what I call the app ID. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to save it in my notepad because we might need that later. It's always good to have the reference to the app ID. Here we go. I'm just going to pop it right there. Now, description, we will give a high-level description, Power Page app for my organization. Very simple. You can put whatever you want in here, and the same goes with a long description, but they need to be different. So once we've done that, okay, we set the version of the app. Almost in all cases, it's 1.0.0. We don't need to change that. I put in the name of my organization. I'm going to call my organization Metaverse 1. I then give a website address, a URL. As an organization who's creating this Power Page, we should have this. So I'm going to call this metaverse-1.rocks because that's the website of our conference. I'm going to then put in the privacy and the terms of use. Again, these have to be filled in. So I'm going to put in here just /privacy under the terms of use /terms. And now we come to the first time that we have to use Azure AD. This is called the client ID, and we need to get this from Azure AD. We cannot get this through Microsoft Teams. So let me just come out to Azure AD. This is what we need, which is the app ID, but how do we actually get to it? Well, we click on Enterprise Applications, we remove all the filters, and then we put in the name of our Power Page. And you will see there, it will be referring to its old name Portals, and then we'll have the name. You can see there's one that I deployed earlier. And this is the app ID that we actually take. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to pop that there. I'm going to pop that into my app as well. So here we go. Now, before I save and move on to the next page, I need to kind of configure and get what's called the API URL. I'm going to click here, okay, on the name. I'm going to then click single sign-on. I'm going to then click this link here, which will take me to another page. Taking its time to load up. I might have to refresh the page and try to do this again. Let's see if it. Okay. Gonna try this again. Let's see if it takes some time. Let's come out. Go back into Azure AD. Thing about live portals is that I think all of us as speakers have this. We, as we're doing this live, we always take the risk of latency within the portal. So I'm just going to find that app again, which is Bizz Summit. Okay. Portal is having issues. Awesome. Let's see if we can find it again. Now it's actually gone through. If not, we'll refer back. I have got the API, but I just wanted to show you for this session. Here we go. We go to single sign-on. Let's hope this loads. So here we go. We then go down to expose an API. So this is where we want to go, and this is what we need. We need this application ID URI. We would copy that to the clipboard. We would also put it here as well. Okay. And there we go. That looks good. Now, what we want to make sure, okay, is that for our client ID, okay, that the client ID should show here. If it's not, then you should need to add it. Now, the reason we're doing this is because when, okay, we deploy the app, and after we've deployed the app, we need the app to render inside the app. By configuring single sign-on for our app, this will make sure it authenticates and it renders correctly. So now that we've done this, okay, we can move on to the next step. Let's go back into Microsoft Teams. We save. We've got our app ID in there. We've got our URLs. We've got our developer information. We've got everything we need of that basic information. We can then choose to brand if we want. This is the important part in terms of defining it as a personal app. So there's many things that we can build in App Studio, but today we're building a personal app. Create your first personal app tab. I'll give it a name. Okay. Call it Bizz Summit. We've got an entity ID. Now in App Studio, we'd have to generate our own, but it generates today. We take the URL of the site, which is bizzsummit.powerappsportals.com, and then we put it in the content URL. We do not need to put anything in the website URL. We confirm that, and then we save, and then we can add another personal app if we want at the same time. If we go back to that app features, we should now see, this is what you should see. You should see a personal app up the top, and this is important. We'll go back and we'll check this after we've saved all the information. We don't need to worry about the permissions. We can leave that blank. Here is where that application ID URI comes in. That's where we need to put this in. Okay. So we expose that URI. We click save. That info has now been updated. In terms of languages, we can set the language here. In terms of the domain, we create our domain and then add the domain of the Power Portal. So we don't need to include the HTTPS. It's just bizzsummit.powerappsportals.com. And then we click add. Now that's been added successfully. So let's just scroll through all that again. We've got our basic information. I scroll down here. Okay. We've got our branding. We've got our app features. Now, look, here we can see that this has disappeared. So if this disappears for some reason, we need to re-add it. Now, I called this Bizz Summit. I don't know why it does this. But if I was to go ahead and just deploy that app, okay, then I would have a kind of problem because not all the information would be there, and that would have problems later on. So I've got so just check over a few times and make sure that you've got this. It's really important because if I push this up into Microsoft Teams and some of this isn't there, that's not going to work. So remember, basic information, setting as a personal app, the single sign-on with the URI, and the domain. Once we have those things, we can then publish to the organization. Okay. I now can publish my app. This will take a bit of time. So look, version 1.0.0. Now with the belts and braces approach, okay, what I want, would like people to do is go to home and then go to apps and then double check it again. So within Bizz Summit, click on the information and just sanity check that all the information that we put in is there. It's the personal app is there, the API, the single sign-on is there, and the domain is there. Because that will be the difference between a successful deployment and it's failed. And I did this several times and, I got it wrong. This is just picking up on good practice. So the app is now submitted to our admin to install inside our environment. And if I jump into the Teams admin center and I go to manage apps, I'm just going to do a refresh on this because this has been open a while. So here we go. If I go to manage apps and I click on Bizz Summit, you will see it's there. It's been submitted, but it's been blocked because the admin needs to authorize it before we can just put it in our environment. Normally they're the one and the same person, but it could be two different people. What we need to do before we actually deploy into Teams is we need to replace what's called the XFrame entity then that's within the site settings of the Power Page. This is like the final piece of the puzzle. I spent a lot of time trying to find out what it was that stopped Power Page's rendering inside, and that is because we need to replace this with something called a content security policy. Inside Power Apps, right, make.powerapps.com, this is where we need to go. And when you do this, make sure that you've got the right environment, otherwise you won't see it. We need to see, if I refresh this, our apps, okay? We then have Bizz Summit. So you can see here, we click on the three buttons for Bizz Summit, which is our Power Page. And then we click on settings, and then we click on site settings in the flyout. Once we click on the site settings and the flyout, we've got these active site settings. Now we need to go to I think it's maybe page 5. And scroll down. Okay, maybe it's page 6. There we go. We need to go, okay. If you've not deployed, if you've not done this kind of previously for any kind of Power Pages, what you need to make sure is, okay, is that rather than the XFrame options and same origin, what you need to ensure is that you put in a content security policy with this value in it, frame ancestors self, with the Microsoft Team URL in it. And that needs to go against the default portal template. If you do not do this, then it will not render. So this is something that we absolutely have to do. So I'm just going to give you an example. On the default portal template, click it and then replace it. Replace the XFrame options with the content security policy. And then you put in this frame ancestors self https teams.microsoft.com. So you're replacing the same origin, and then you click save and close. So that is kind of the final action before we push this into Microsoft Teams. I go back to the Teams admin center. I then click on the app. I then publish. Now, we're taking a bit of a risk at this point doing a live demo because it can be a few hours before the app actually appears. Most of the time it's okay, but those should be all the steps in order to be able to do it. But you don't know until, you kind of test. So I'm just going to refresh Teams. I'm going to see if the app shows up. So if I click on the three dots, okay, I can try and find it here, but I can go to apps within Teams and it might be here. It's not showing yet. This is there. Nope, still not showing yet. Let's see if it comes in here. Here we go. It's showing. I don't know if this is the one. I deployed one earlier. Yeah, I deployed one earlier. That's the one, but it's because I haven't logged out before I've logged back in. Let me see if I can refresh again or potentially log out and log back in, and then we'll see if our app finally decides to come into our environment. So give me a second. I'll close this down. I'll come out completely. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna launch a new window. login.microsoftonline.com. I'm going to take some test credentials, what I'm using. I'll reset the password as soon as I finish this demo. And then I sign in. I always have to keep some creds around because of exactly because of things like this. I'm just going to multi-factor authentication into my environment. So this should be a completely new session. Again, it might turn up, it might not. If it's not, we're gonna have to go through and just try going to teams.microsoft.com. Okay, here we go. So here we are in Teams. Let's see if the app shows up. Again, it might not. Okay, if I go to built for my org, look, it's there. I've got the ability to now add. If I add, just waiting. While we're waiting on that, let's go to the and see if it can here. Let's see if it's locked out. Okay. Yes, it has, but it's kind of which one? Power page for our organization. No, that's the other one. There we go. Look, there it is. Bizz Summit, Bizz Summit. It will come through. It might be taking a little bit of time to propagate on the web. But look, there it is. There is our Bizz Summit app that we have within inside our Power page. You know, look, there it is. There's the web version, just so that I've got it in everything and I can show you. So that's quite risky stuff. We've gone through from beginning to end, and now we've got our Power page. We can deploy it in a tab. We can deploy it in a personal app to our organization or our customers. So to sum up, in about just over kind of half an hour, 40 minutes, we've shown how you can deploy that Power page as a tab with inside Microsoft Teams. You can deploy it in a public channel, a private channel, or a shared channel. We can deploy it as a personal app. We go through a series of stages. We deploy the Power page first of all. We create the personal app. And remember, we use the developer portal, but we need the information from Azure AD, and in Azure AD we need to configure single sign-on and then put that Azure AD information into the app when we're creating it, and that app has to have all that information. It needs, okay, the client ID, which we took a note of. So if I scroll up here, We need that client ID. We need that URI exposing that API. We need those things in order for it to be able to work properly and for it to be able to render. We replace the HTTP XFrame settings in Power Apps. We actually do that. So we create that content security policy. You might need to go back and watch the recording to capture the screenshot of that. But also as well, I'll provide this deck which has the screenshot in it. And then we can finally deploy the app. I was pretty lucky there because it can take up to a couple of hours for that app to actually show inside the environment, and it showed in both the web app and in the desktop client after the space of about 5 minutes. I had to log back out and log back in, but it just doesn't happen immediately. That can be challenging for presentations like this. So to finish off, the call to action, number 1, try deploying into Teams today. I hope I've shown you the way to do it correctly. I hope that opens up a bit of a new string for you, and I'd love to hear if what you did it correctly. Number 2, whether an alternative to SharePoint or Viva, get feedback from users regarding the experience from your customers as well, and use both inside your environment. It's very quick to do SharePoint, and you get templates. It's out of the box. That might be what you need. But if you've got Fusion teams, if you've got those makers and those pro devs together, and you want to create, a really high impact site to have with inside Microsoft Teams, then Power Pages is the way to go. Number 3, use the experience to deploy for customers into their hub for teamwork. Because get this, once you deploy the Power Page, that is shown, kind of externally, right? Okay. Once you know how to do it once, you can do it again and again for your customers. I've shown you how to do it with inside the space of 30 to 40 minutes, assuming that you have the prerequisites to hand. It doesn't take long in order to be able to do, but it's something that's high impact. The customer can say, wow, that's our site, or that's my partner's site inside my team's environment. Returning to the outcomes. First of all, we looked at the why. There's lots of reasons. We want to have it in our kit bag that sits alongside SharePoint and Viva connections. We have seen, and there are great Power Pages out there. We want them in Microsoft Teams. By doing it as a personal app, this is consistent with all other, or most of the other Power Platform services within inside the environment. But I hope we achieved our outcome, which is to learn how to install and render Power Pages in Microsoft Teams. This was a level 300 advanced session. We focused on the Microsoft Teams and the deploying, the customizing. Your Fusion team can go into the Power Page portal and then go and do it that end. And of course, now we've got it deployed within Teams, it's going to go and show there. The demo, 60 to 70%, I would probably say 70% given the time, and it's valid for 4 weeks. Look, Microsoft has always said they might come along and they might develop an app themselves and just put it inside the environment. That's what happened with Viva Connections and SharePoint, right? And I truly hope that's the case, because, I don't want to spend 30 to 40, minutes necessarily if I'm doing a lot of these jobs. I'd love to just deploy the app straight out of the Teams Admin Center. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know of anything on the roadmap, and Microsoft haven't committed to anything like that. But maybe they'll see this session, and maybe they'll think, yeah, look, we can do this. But this gives you the opportunity to do it now, should you want. So I hope you've enjoyed the session. I hope you have a good Bizz Summit, and I hope it's everything that you thought it would be. In fact, I know it is, because I know the organizers personally, and they're great people. They care about their, the people that they work with, and they care about the attendees of their conference. Thanks ever so much to the organizers and the sponsors. As I said, reach out with any questions. You can do so over LinkedIn or over Twitter. You can follow me on there, or alternatively, contact the organizers and get them to send it through to me. Thank you ever so much, and have a great day.